So I'm gonna go ahead and start with showing you all the transfers. So there are two large transfers. One is called Galloping Grace, which is awesome. And the other one is called Antler Chandelier. So this is what they look like. This is the Antler Chandelier. This is a tube transfer. So that means it's a large full-size transfer, and it's 24 by 35 inches. Yep, 24 by 35 inches. And each of these transfers come in 2 sheets. So I'm going to talk about them in a second. I want to show you what comes in the transfer. So you get the tube with the transfer in it. Mine's actually laying out flat, and I'll explain why in a second. But you also get directions. So you get a really nice instructions sheet, and you also get an applicator tool, which I use all the time when I apply the transfers. So I'm going to share with you, I'll do the Antler Chandelier first because it's on the top. So I have to sort of take you all and move you just slightly. So that way I can show you the transfer. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the transfer around. I was trying to figure out how to show you all the easiest way to share this, for me anyway. So here we go. Welcome to my living room, by the way. I'm gonna go ahead and put you all down so you can see. So here's the chandelier, the Antler Chandelier. Let me take it back a little tiny bit. Now this is 24 by 35. So this one's actually horizontal. So it's 24 inches high by 35 inches wide. And the really interesting thing and very cool thing about Prima's transfers is they've created a way so that it's kind of like a puzzle piece. So these all align, but they don't do it in a straight line. They kind of make it jagged so that your eye isn't drawn to a hard line of where the two transfers meet. So I actually think that's such a great, way to help, especially if you're new to rub-on transfers, large ones anyway. It's a really nice way to help someone new to be able to align the pattern of the transfer. The other thing that I love is they've added, these are the colors that are in the transfer itself. So it's kind of a color inspo to help you decide, what kind of colors can you, would go with something like this transfer. So I think that doing that is kind of a really neat idea, especially for people who are new to transfers. I've been doing transfers now for at least 5 years. So I want to give you a little tip. So when you're working with a transfer, you have 2 papers. You have the clear side, which is, I believe it's acetate paper, and then you have the white paper underneath, which is called the backing paper. I usually take painter's tape, and I go ahead and I kind of seal the 2 papers together until I'm ready to work with them. Because these papers, because they're in a tube, they tend to, at first, they roll. And so if your transfer paper rolls onto itself, it could ruin the transfer, it could stick together. So that's a little tip from me to you. Also makes it easier when I go to roll them up, because I have the tape securely keeping the 2 papers together, the backing paper and the clear paper, the transfer paper. So it just makes it easier if you go to roll it, except I think I forgot to do it on that one side. I'm in I was so nervous to go live, don't ask. I go live all the time, so it's not like it's a big deal. But I was a little nervous. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these out, put this back in to keep it safe, and show you the next one, which I love. This one is called Galloping Grace. Isn't she cool? So the really cool thing about her, again, going with the edges, it's like a puzzle. So see how you have the jagged edges going down? It's not a straight, hard edge. So what you do is you rub the one side of the transfer down, and then you come back and you take the paper, the backing paper, the white paper off, you line it up, and then you never see the line. You never see where the two papers or the two transfers are separated. Again, we've got the color inspiration, which I think is really interesting that Prima's doing this. I love that idea because it really helps people to know the colors that are actually in the transfer. And I have, and I got it at one of the craft stores, I use a color wheel all the time. They're only a couple dollars. But if you use a color wheel and you go to the contrasting color, it helps to maybe take, if you want to emphasize, see how that goes in? Okay. So if you want to emphasize, I'm going to bring y'all back around here to me for a second. So if you want to emphasize the transfer and make it pop, invest in a color wheel. They're only like $5, and it's really worth it, I think anyway. Okay, so here is another transfer in the collection. This is a maxi transfer, and it's the only transfer in the Wild West Whispers collection. They come in 2 sheets. Now, I was just watching Brandy, and Brandy was working with this, and which is so funny because she kept saying, I hope that the next artist or whoever's doing this. And I was like, we're good. I'm not doing the same thing. We're good. But it was funny because I thought, you know, oh, she was giving me some good ideas. So, okay, so 2 sheets. And the thing about these, the maxi transfers, is that they're very versatile. You can take apart what you want to use from the transfer. You don't have to use the entire transfer. You can design it in any way that you want, and they come in 12 by 12 sheets. So I think what's really been popular from this particular transfer today are the faux nail heads, which I've heard Janelle was mentioning it this morning, and Brandy was talking about it. These are so cool, and they actually look real. They look realistic when you apply it. Kind of has a little 3D effect. So, but it has a Texas Longhorn and stars, which when we get to my project, I'm going to talk about that. I did these in a 3-dimensional format because I'll explain that in a second. But it's one of those situations where you kind of make a design choice. I may use this on it, but not today, but I may actually use this on what we're going to work on today. So I'm going to put this over here. So next is, and I've already used this, I've been using this a lot over the last few days. This is the Decor Moulds, and it is, again, the only one in the collection of the Wild West Whispers collection. But look at this. Isn't this neat? You have the stars, you have the Texas Longhorn. It's very cool. So I already cast the Texas Longhorn. I cast it in clay, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, but there's different ways that you can use these silicone molds. Now, I can't even tell you how many Prima molds I have in my collection. Let's just say a lot, and I use them all the time on my projects. And there's 3 ways that I cast molds. I cast molds either with hot glue or quick casting resin or clay. And it depends on what I'm trying to achieve as to which material I use to cast. So, but I've been using this a lot. And as I was going through this collection, it was very fascinating to me I was looking at the costs, and I actually messaged my, the director of the brand ambassadors as I was ordering my first order. And I said to her, I said, are these correct? And she says, what do you mean? And I said, the price, I was shocked in a good way. I was really surprised, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. But let's get on with this, and then I'll talk to you about it. So here are Decoupage Decor tissue papers, and this particular one is called Ranch Roamers. I believe Brandy used this during the last live, and there's 3 papers. There's 3 sheets in here, and each sheet is 19.5 by 30 inches. So they're really big. They're really big. So we have 3 different sheets. These are all animal prints. And let's see. Well, this one is Texas Longhorn. So this is kind of like, it looks like it's printed over like leather. And let me see if I can bring this up close for you all to see like a really good indication of the different variations of color, the striations of color going through. Now these are tissue paper, but I do want to talk to you about the tissue paper. The tissue paper, because remember, I'm a brand new brand ambassador and I've worked with other companies. This is not like napkins. This is not like, you know, I've used tissue paper before that would be like 18-pound, 20-pound paper, and that's just a classification of the heaviness of the paper itself. These are more like a material, but a thin material. So if you're a beginner to decoupage, my advice to you would be to try something like this tissue paper, because it's still thin, but it's maneuverable and manageable. I used another tissue paper for a jewelry armoire that I finished. I haven't even had a chance today to share that yet, but I promise to. And I moved it. I moved the paper and readjusted it on the drawer fronts that I did, because I did 2 separate papers. With this tissue paper, you can do that. It is very strong. You can definitely, you know, if you're a beginner, I really highly recommend this. And the third tissue paper in this particular one called Ranch Roamers, this is the cow print that Brandy just used. So it's very, very cool. So these in the pack of 3, and again, 3 different sheets. It could literally, you could do 3 different projects with it. It's $19.99 US. So I was really surprised by that, happily surprised. You can really get a lot of projects out of it. The other one is called Western Whimsy, and these are geometrical shapes. So, you know, Wild West patterns that you would see like in the Southwest. So this one, I love this one, by the way. And this has a tiny bit, let's see if I can share with you. I'm trying to figure out which way. This has some script inside some of the shapes. So it's kind of cool. And I love the colors in this one, it's very pretty. Oh, you know what? Somebody was asking Brandy, and I might as well address this too. How do you get wrinkles out of these? Fiber paper and tissue paper. This is how I do it. I do it one of 2 ways. I either iron it with, and I use like just a regular house iron, but I put parchment paper over the paper just to make sure that I'm not, you know, because sometimes the irons can get a little bit hot. You don't want to scorch the paper, and you don't want to keep the iron over one section of the paper for too long. You want to go quickly over it. That will release it, will release the creases and the folds. Isn't this beautiful? The other way that I use is a clothes steamer. That also works. Now, Brandy was talking about, she uses either her heat gun, which personally I don't, but that's only because I'm afraid that I would burn the paper. That's just me. Or also a hair dryer, and I do use hair dryers a lot because to me, hair dryers, you can control the heat. I'm a little terrified of my heat gun. We have a love-hate relationship. So this is the third pattern. Isn't this gorgeous? Oh my God, I love this. So a friend of mine who messaged me this morning and said, her name is Melody, and she said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see this one. This is right up her alley. I was thinking of her the whole time when I first saw this, I was like, this is right up her alley. So very excited about this. Okay, so now I have three more things to share with you. And these are the fibers, fiber paper. So let me explain what this is. These are decoupage, again, decoupage papers. This one is called the Cowboy Calvary, and it's a size A1. So if it's a size A1, it's gonna be 23.4 inches by 33.1 inches. Now this one is tall, so this is gonna be vertical. Now, if I am doing a decoupage, 95% of the time, I will paint white wherever this would lay. So wherever the decoupage, wherever you've decided it's gonna be located on your piece, I paint it white so that it pops the colors. It really shows the image better. It pops the image. There have been a few times where I'll do it with a dark color, very few times. It's only if I'm looking for something like, I don't know, like steampunk, something moody, or, you know, something that has a little bit of edge to it. But something like this, I would definitely put white paint, and I'll use just chalk, you know, mineral chalk infused paint. And I let it dry. I see people, and there's nothing wrong with this, I see people who will use like a heat gun, a hair dryer. I prefer to let it dry naturally. So I'll walk away for like a couple hours, maybe even a half of a day, and then I'll come back and decoupage over it. That's just me. So the next, this is fiber again, fiber paper. So where I showed you the tissue paper and it had a texture to it, so does the fiber paper, but it's a little bit thicker. So, oh my, isn't this beautiful? This one is called Yakitude. Trying to get it back far enough so that you can see it. The face on this is so stinking cute. It's really adorable. I love this one. So with fiber paper, it's kind of like a weave. It's like a dryer sheet, for the lack of a better way to put it. If you can blend it out, like if you want to extend the image, but if you are going to do something like that with a fiber, because it's a little bit thicker, I would use a textured paint, a little bit texture added to it, and then blend it out. That's how I do it. Or I might add trim and trim it out around the actual image. Just depends on my mood. Depends on the piece too. So the next paper, which is my favorite, I'm just gonna say it, sorry, it is. This one is called Texas Flag, and the reason I can't show you the actual paper is because it's gonna be part of our project in a minute. So here is the Texas Flag. And again, it's an A1. All three of these that I've shown you are A1s. So they're 23.4 inches by 33.1 inches. Now, this one is horizontal. So it's 33 across by 24 high, or 23 high and change. So the first one that I showed you was vertical. You have to think about that if you're planning a piece. Like, I think about it like if I'm looking for something that I'm doing a vertical paper with, I might look for a dresser or any kind of furniture that I want to put it on, but I want it to be a little bit taller than necessarily, like some pieces I get are wider, and that would be for horizontal. Okay, So now I want to start a reverse decoupage, and I have a window over here, so I'm going to bring the window over. So, oh, I forgot to tell you the most important part of the A1. Sorry about that. This is important. I don't want to forget it. So these A1 papers, the fiber papers, are, hold on, let me double check. I think I want to make a mistake on this. They're $12.99. $12.99 for each. So you can do a project for $12.99 for the paper. That's incredible. It really is, especially nowadays. It's very awesome in my mind. So I'm gonna grab my window, and I'm gonna have to flip it over. Okay, so I prepped this window and cleaned it. Let me flip you all so you can see it. I'm gonna make sure we have a good view of this. So I did this window the other day, and I'm gonna tell you straight out, it was a mess. It was incredible mess, but I cleaned it well. So I cleaned it with trisodium phosphate granular. Then I took that and I scrubbed. Then I cleaned it with tap water from the faucet multiple times. Then I painted it. Then I cleaned the glass, but it's gonna be really cool when we're done. So before I start on this, because I have to flip it, I wanna show you. So I cast this really cool, I wanna do it so I don't break it, Longhorn clay. But I was talking to my daughter through FaceTime, and she said, Mom, take flowers and do the top crown it with flowers, because she goes, I see that everywhere in Austin. And so I grabbed my Prima's fragrant roses and I cast some roses in clay. And the reason I used clay is clay will allow you to mold your design around your piece. So if you have curves, if you have, in this case, I'm going to be going over the frame. So if you have anything like that, my suggestion would be to cast it in clay. If you cast it in clay, you're gonna need to give yourself at least 48 hours for it to dry. And another tip that I learned is when you're allowing it to dry, take a damp paper towel and place it over the clay. That way, as it dries, it doesn't crack, or at least as easily. So, and see how the roses will come off? So I'm gonna paint the roses. I'm gonna glue them on to the Texas Longhorn skull. I'm gonna paint the skull white, and the roses are gonna probably be pink. But I will not be able to do that on this live, and the reason is it took longer for the clay to dry. I did cast some stars in resin, so if we have time, I'll be able to show you how to like really embellish those. Here's the leftover paper that I cut. I'm gonna show you and talk to you about how I cut the paper and cut it to size. So keep your scraps. It's another tip from me to you. Keep your scraps, because you never know. If you're doing like a piece of furniture or something, and maybe something happened, and not necessarily with fiber. That fiber is like the strongest decoupage you can use. But I keep my scraps because you never know if you have to replace a little tiny piece or if you can use it for something else. So this is how I cut my paper. I took a piece of just white copy paper and I cut it to the size and made a template. Then I took this is called a Taylor's chalk pencil. And I went over the paper and I just drew around the template. And then I could cut to size. That's how I did it. So it wasn't too challenging. Now I have a couple of different tools that I use for decoupage. I'm going to talk about those in a second. But let me move my paper. The other thing that I did, and this is important, I used Post-it notes and I labeled each paper so that I know not only the side, so these are reversed right now, but not only do I know the side that I need to decoupage with, but also it also tells me the location. So how I did it was I said, and I'm making sure that I don't have that my glass is clean, because that's important. You don't want to decoupage the dirt to your glass. Okay, so this one says top inside right, and it's the star. I even said star. So what I'll do is I'm going to place it here, and we're going to decoupage it down together in a second. I want to make sure you all have a good view, as good of a view as I can give you. Okay, hold on a second. Make sure we're good. I don't usually do this in my living room. Okay, so, and this is the middle top. And it's also, when I put the label on it, I did it like, okay. So this is the actual right side of the paper. So if I were decoupaging this to furniture, I would be doing, you would see this side. This side, and this is why it's called reverse decoupage. This side is going to go down on top of the glass. And so that's why reverse decoupage. Okay. So this one is far left yellow. It's going to go here. Now, before I start, I'd rather double and triple check just to make sure that we're good. Because once you glue it down, although since this is fiber paper, when I glue it down, I can move it back up. You have a little play time with it. But once it's dry, then you're done, unless you reactivate the glue. I'll talk about that in a second too. Middle bottom, red, and then far left, red. Okay. So before I start, I double check my picture, and remembering that I'm looking at the back side of the window. When I glue it down, I'm gonna flip it over and it'll look like this from the other side of the window. Okay. Now, I use the Redesign with Prima Decoupage Gel. And this is not only a glue, but it also will seal it. So, and it's in matte finish. You can change the finish of the top, like if I wanted something, and I don't in this case, but if I wanted something to have a glossy finish, I would do a couple of coats of this as a varnish, and then I would go over that with a water-based top coat. Never oil-based, always water-based. If you use oil-based on paper, on this paper, it could yellow over time, and it just, always use water. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move this so you can see what I'm about to do. I wanna make sure it's as clean because I've been moving this thing around. I don't wanna glue any dust particles or dirt, if I can help. Okay, so I have this is a synthetic bristle brush, and it's smooth and it's very soft. That's the kind of brush that I use for the glue. And I just go ahead and I apply it. Now, because it's fiber paper, I'm gonna apply a thicker coat than if it were rice paper or even the tissue paper, because it's thicker. And I wanna make sure that I get a good amount on here, because the paper is going to, it's gonna absorb it a little bit. So, okay, I have 2 tools. This is my brayer roller. Now, whenever I do use it for decoupage, I use the spongy roller. This comes with 4 attachments. It comes with acrylic, rubber, spongy, and I can't remember the 4th one, but it does have 4. I, 90% of the time, am using this one because it has a little give. And especially with glass. You don't want to press too hard with glass, but you do want to make sure that it's adhering. Okay. Now I'm noticing that I want to bring it over a little tiny bit. And with fiber paper, you can move it. See how I'm maneuvering it around? It's hard for me to see right now. Sorry, guys and girls, gals. Hard for me to see because I'm trying to give you the vantage point here. Okay. And you just want to make sure, and I'm making sure I'm tucking the corners in. Now I also use, oftentimes I'll use crumpled up plastic wrap. And honestly, I forgot to bring it over. So that's no problem. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. You're just looking right now to make sure that there are no air bubbles. With fiber paper, I don't normally have wrinkles or air bubbles, but you really want to make sure that it's really solidly adhered. The other thing is, if you have enough, and it depends on the paper, the type of paper that you use. With fiber paper, I will use more gel, more glue, thicker amount than I would normally use for rice paper. The reason is, like I said, with this, it's thicker, so you want it to absorb. And what I see is I see it coming through, it's seeping through, which is good. I want it to do that. But as it seeps through, you just want to be a little bit more cautious or using this. This is called a car tinting tool. And I will use it sometimes to get it up into corners where this doesn't really do, it's harder to get it up into a corner. This is much more simple to get into a corner. And the thing is, it's got felt on both sides. So it's really quite gentle on the paper. Just be careful if you're using a thinner paper not to push too. Sometimes if I'm using a thinner paper, I will use like the sheet, the plastic sheet that the Decoupage came in, and I'll put it over it like this, and then I'll run that over it, and it protects the paper. But with fiber paper, it's much more durable than that. Okay. So let's see if I can continue. See, I can't see because of the way that the my camera is set up right now if I have any questions. So hopefully my moderators can help if there are any. And if not, what I'll do is after the live, I promise to go back. One thing I do is I always check. If I have questions, I want to make sure that I've answered them. Okay, don't want, there we go. Oh, the gel, even though it's going on white, it does dry clear. So this will dry clear, and you will not see any bit of paste at all. So I'll put this one on, and then what I want to do is I want to show you what I do after, which is I coat it again with a top coat of the varnish, of the gel. It becomes a varnish on top. Making sure I'm lined up. Hopefully my head is not in your view. It doesn't, nobody can call you, except it doesn't work with people on your favorites list. And as I'm talking about my daughter, Rachel, who lives in Austin, Texas, guess who's calling me right now? Rachel, if you see this, I'm on a live. I will call you back. It's so funny. See, she must have been thinking about me. Okay. See how this works? This is a really cool tool. So it just goes into the corners and crevices, whereas this can't always do that, but I do come back and follow up with the roller just to make, this is called a brayer roller, just for people who might not know. And, okay. So what I'm going to show you, because I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to finish this on the live, but that's okay. I want to show you, you go back over it with a very generous coat of the gel, and it acts as a top coat. It acts as a varnish, a sealer, whatever you want to call it. Now I'm going in multiple directions. The reason I'm doing that is because honestly, I'm trying to make sure that I get everything coated, and I have a couple little bits that I don't want left there, so I want to pick that up if I can. Sometimes, because you can go straight from the container, and when you do that, and that's fine, that's how I do it all the time, but sometimes when you do that, it leaves like little tiny bits around the corner or the edges that have kind of dried, and I want to make sure that I get that. Even though this is the back side, nobody sees this, but I still want to get it. I don't want to leave that there. It's not professional of me. So I'm going to add this. Then I'm going to let this dry. Then I'm going to turn around. Once I do that, I don't want to leave that in there because I'll just do it again. Then what I'm going to do is once it's dry, and that takes probably about 45 minutes, then I'll go back over it and I will do another coat, and then it's sealed. Let's see, any questions? The transfers work great on glass too. That's true. That's very true. The transfers do work great on glass. I've used transfers on glass before. The only thing that and this is no big deal, but I don't, I'll do it on the outside of the glass, and then I don't seal the glass because and I don't know, Carrie, maybe you, or are you aware of any sealers that dry completely clear? Because I use a spray sealer, but the spray sealer even leaves like a little bit of a foggy, hazy look. So, okay. So I'm not sure. But yeah, I've done it on glass, and you're right. It actually looks spectacular. I want to pick this up right now and just show you all what I have so far so that you can see the vision. And then I still have a few more minutes, so I might be able to continue. We'll see. I want to show you what it looks like so that you can all see. Okay, let me move this. So this is, I'll bring you this way a little bit. This is what it's gonna look like once it's kind of together and it's gonna dry. The reason I like to do reverse decoupage over windows is that you can still clean this side. There's like, you can do whatever you want to this side. That's why I like to do that. I also haven't had an opportunity yet to seal the paint. Now the paint that I used on this is a chalk paint and it, oh, sorry. I will seal it. And when I do, I'll seal the whole thing on the outside. Not too worried about the inside, but definitely seal the outside. Middle, bottom. See, this is why I actually label, because if I'm talking and on a live and I don't want to lose my place, I don't want to lose what I'm doing. So to me, if you label it, even if you're working on it at home and you're not on a camera, if you label what you're doing, it helps you to make sure that you just don't inadvertently make a mistake. So that's why I do it. Okay. I'll try to do a little bit more because I'm looking at the clock. I think, what time is it? I've got a few more minutes. Can you post a picture when complete? Lisa, absolutely, I promise to. And this will probably be finished, what's today, Monday? I'll probably have it completely finished by Wednesday. Hopefully, maybe even tomorrow. I was hoping to do the mold, but what I'm gonna do is, let me do another section of this, then I'm gonna show you something with the molds. Because molds are very interesting to me. They can really elevate your piece, make it three-dimensional, do all kinds of really cool things that just make it a one-of-a-kind piece. So I use molds a lot. As a matter of fact, I have a client that I got, you know, I'm so blessed to have such incredible clients. When I told them that Redesign with Prima messaged me and asked me to be on their team, I said, you know, they were all like, that's so exciting. And I said, well, there's only one problem. I have to push your pieces back by, you know, at least a month. And every single one of my clients that I said, you know, I've got 7 pieces or 8 pieces, I lose track, of furniture that I have to do. They all were so kind, every one of them. So I'm making sure, as I'm chatting away, that I have all of my edges. You want to make sure that you get your edges really covered. That's important. You don't want the fiber paper to come back up. Okay, now this, I think of all the papers to use to do a window and do reverse decoupage, I really think that the weave is probably the best. And the reason I say that, now you can do it with tissue paper, you can do it with rice paper, but the reason I like the weave, look at how I keep pulling it up, because I'm OCD with perfectionist tendencies, which are good and sometimes not so good. And what I find is I keep lifting it because I need it to be repositioned slightly. And if you do that with other papers, you're not gonna have it's just not gonna work as well. Okay, up, and see, because I'm doing that, I developed a little bit of a crease, unusual, but I was messing with it a lot. So what I did was I started in the middle of the paper. And that's another tip from me to you. When you're decoupaging, it kind of, if you've ever wallpapered, I treat it like wallpaper. You start from the middle, you work your way out to the sides. And that way, if you have air bubbles, you can release them through the sides instead of doing the sides and then realizing, oh, I have a big air bubble in the middle, and then you have to go back and rework it. Just go from the middle and work your way out. Save yourself some trouble. Okay. So, see how easy this is? It's not hard. I think the most challenging part of the whole entire process is making sure that you've measured your paper correctly. If you haven't, you can still fix it. Like, that's why I said, don't throw away your scraps. Because you can definitely, like, if I have an area that I don't have paper, I can just find the color that matches, cut a sliver off, and glue it in place, and you're never gonna see the difference. You're never gonna know. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna let that be. And I wanna show you all one more thing. If I can find it, I will show it. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. So I did a couple of casts of resin. I did resin, and the reason I did resin on the stars was because, remember I told you I did the Longhorn in clay. Okay, this is completely clay. It's not 100% dry yet. It's really close, and here's how you can tell if it's dry or not. It's still cold or cool to the touch on the back. So that tells me it's not 100% dry. So I'm gonna give it another, it should be definitely dry by tomorrow, but I'm gonna give it the time it needs. And because if you paint it and you glue it and it's not 100% dry, you run the risk of it cracking. You run the risk of it not adhering to your piece properly. So that's why I do that. But if I want something fast, I cast these in 10 minutes. This is quick cast resin. So there's a couple companies that sell the resin, but the really cool thing is you mix the two together, called side A, side B. You mix them together and you pour them, and then within about 10 minutes, 15 tops, they turn white. Once they turn white, you can pop them from the mold. It's very easy to pop them from the mold. So as I progress with Prima and I start going live, I'll probably do a lesson on how to cast molds. But, so in 10 minutes, I got this. You can paint it immediately with resin. You cannot paint clay immediately, but you can resin. So I went ahead and I painted them. And so now I want to show you, I'm going to take a little bit of Redesign with Prima's wax paste, and this is called brushed iron. So it's kind of like a rustic silver. And this piece is kind of going in that direction. So take a tiny amount on my finger, tiny. And I'm just gonna go over where, let's see if I can get you all really close and me be able to see too. I just wanna go over like the points. And that's all. Like, I do the whole thing, but I go over it. And this dries pretty quickly. It's oil-based, so you don't need to seal it. And see how it pops? You could literally paint the entire thing with the metallic, with the wax paste. You could use metallic paints. You could use, this is just chalk paint, and then I did the wax paste over it. So there's so many ways to do that. But what I like to do is I like to emphasize the detail on the molds. And so what I'll do is eventually I will put it in the corners probably. See if you all can see. and then I'll glue it down. I use Tight Bond Quick and Thick, but there's also others out there. You just want a glue that has the ability to expand and contrast with molds. So that's all you need. Okay, that was like an hour. That went, whoo! So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up. Oh, one more thing, another tip. If you do use like wax pastes on your hands, your fingers, just take a wipe, a wet wipe, and wipe it off if you're dealing with a whole project. That way, your fingers aren't putting like silver where you don't want it, so. Oh, and also make sure that you don't leave your wipes in the reach of a little dog named Finn. So, okay. Well, Prima, Redesign with Prima, thank you so much for the honor of being able to come on and share a little bit of what I know and what I've learned. And thank you for allowing me to share my knowledge with all of you. I am going to let you go, and I want to say one thing. There is another live coming up, and the next live is Hannah from Hannah Banana Creations, and she is going to be, I believe, sharing the brand new tissue papers with all of you. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. You can message me on my Mary Posta Creations by Valerie account. I'm happy to answer. So take care. I'll love this line. I do too, isn't it cool? Got my little bandana. All right, everybody, take care. Have a fantastic day. And check out Hannah in about 5 minutes. Take care. Bye.